all you Nightmare nerds, and welcome to a very special episode of the Nightmare Network podcast. Today we will be speaking with our first very special guest, a man who has, through hard work and dedication, somehow achieved my dream job of forcing strangers to listen to my Stephen King obsession for money. Today we will be welcoming Jamie Tinker, owner and operator of the Stephen King Tours of Maine, LLC, to the show. Maine is often referred to as vacation land, whether you're trekking through the epic and beautiful trails of Acadia National Park, gorging on lobster mac and cheese in Bar Harbor, or hitting up the breweries in the more modernly minded Portland. The state is a hub for R&R activities. But if you're anything like me, and I'm sure there are some of you out there, you plan your trip 2.5 hours up past Portland to spend your holidays in the city of Bangor, Maine, the home of Stephen King. However, us diehards know Bangor as a different name, one that we associate with a murderous, shape-shifting entity that frequently takes the shape of a clown and is only known by the 2 letters that terrify on sight: It. Stephen King took his home of Bangor and turned it into Derry in a multitude of different novels. And who can we trust to be our travel guide of the terrifying when we find ourselves in this neck of the woods? None other than Jamie Tinker. Stephen King Tours of Maine LLC will take you on an adventure throughout Derry, showcasing some of the famous landmarks from the books, movies, and TV shows. But it also gives you a fascinating look into the history of both Central Maine and the man behind the stories that keep us up at night. Let's all welcome Jamie Tinker to Nightmare Network. All right, so thank you everyone for joining us on the Nightmare Network podcast. Today we have Jamie Tinker from the SK Tours of Maine, all the way up in Bangor. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jamie. It's such a pleasure to have you on the show.
Oh, happy to be here. Thank you.
All right, so let's jump right into this. So the first thing I guess we're going to talk about, we'll keep it basic. How did the SK Tours of Maine get started? Walk us through that process.
Wow. My father used to own a bookstore called Bet's Bookstore. And it ended up being a large Stephen King adventure. Steve kind of put us on the map as the largest Stephen King collectible bookseller there was. And large visiting groups would come visit Bangor. The first one was called the Schemers, the Stephen King emailers. It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And they showed up one time. And my dad rented like a coach line bus or something, some big thing, and gave them a tour of Bangor. And then he just kept doing that. He kept, on occasion, a large group would show up.
Sure.
And he would give them a tour of Bangor. And then, over 20 years, he did it so much that when he sold Bet's Bookstore and that got relocated down to Connecticut, my dad started Bet's Bookstore's version of that tour as SK Tours.
Oh, okay.
That was about 10 years ago.
Yeah. So when around do you think, like, what year would you say you guys, that first tour happened with the Schemers? When do you think that first started?
Wow. Wow. I don't know. I mean, I was probably overseas at the time in the Navy. So when that happened, I wouldn't know. But I know the Schemers, man, they were there for big things. Like when Nightmares and Dreamscapes came out.
Sure.
When that came out, the truck carrying the books flipped.
Oh, wow.
Off the road.
Yeah. I remember hearing this story.
So the Schemers were at Bangor ready to get the books. And they're like, let's go. And they drove down there and unloaded that truck. I mean, they've been there for so much, and they're such a great bunch of people.
Sure.
But whenever that first tour was, I was not around.
Yeah. And it's funny that you kind of bring that up, because I had a similar experience just recently. Stephen King's most recent release later came out earlier this year, and I had the pre-order slipcase edition. It just showed up the other day, and I special ordered it from Hard Case Crime, and during the shipping process, they let me know that there was, I don't think a truck spill, but they had serious delays because of some shipping problems that were going on. So it took me a few delayed months to get this book. So it's still happening with these shipping things. I'm sure it was so much more difficult, even getting it all the way up there to Maine, even if it is Steve's home territory. So, how would you say that the tour has evolved over the years? Like, what was it like when it first started? I know you just kind of took this over from your dad, and it's been a family business for ever since its inception. But what's the evolution been for the tour? How has it grown? How has it changed? And what do you hope to do with it in the future?
Well, I think it started. It started out of the family vehicle. Dad was just going to do some tours out of the family, like 6-person minivan or something, and he was just driving around with like the information in his head.
Yeah.
But like I'm currently rereading every book in the order it was published, and every book I read, I get something else for a tour.
Yeah.
I get more information, and I think it's evolved. As the vehicle changes, as new books come out, as new interviews surface, you only have 3 hours. You can't get more than 3 hours, so it gets sharper.
Yeah.
You've got to cram as much as you can into those 3 hours, and you've got to try to, also kind of switch it up a bit, because people have taken this tour numerous times.
Really?
And I don't want to give the same boring tour.
What kind of people would they be, I wonder?
Well, there's a guy named Mike who's done it 4 times.
4 times, and I have to break that record. Apparently, there's a record of 5, and now it's in 5. It's in my radar.
Dad was giving the tour in a little family vehicle, on occasion, and I don't think he understood what was going to happen.
Yeah.
Because now, like in 2019, we're doing 40 people a day.
Yeah, that's insane.
And we were turning people away. Most days we couldn't keep up. So as the vehicle changes, your route has to change.
Yeah.
And then what you can talk about. And my father's tour, my tour, and my mother's tour, they're all different.
Yeah.
So we all have a different Steve meaning to us.
Sure.
We all have a first book. We have that first Stephen King experience that got us. We've all got that moment where Steve scared us, and it's different for all of us, just like it is for every other fan out there.
Right.
So it's evolved as it goes. As we meet more fans, we also learn new things from fans.
Sure.
Which excites us. We love doing it. Sometimes my dad even does it backwards.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, he tries to do the tour backwards just to
keep it fresh,
keep his brain going, and keep his brain fire. And I'm not brave enough to do that. I can't do that. But every time I read a thing, and I see a thing I want to put in the tour, I have to choose what comes out.
Yeah.
And as the tour changes, it just has to sharpen. I've got to get as much good quality information as I can, while it's still being something other than rote memorization and basically a PowerPoint. Yeah.
Has there been a difficult decision for you, one that sticks out in your head where you want to put something in, but you're going to have to take something out?
I have a lot of stuff about Hope Cemetery.
Okay.
And I've already taken a bunch out of Mount Hope Cemetery.
Really?
And the next thing I'm going to have to take out of the Mount Hope Cemetery is the crypt.
Oh, interesting.
Because that's not King related at all. It's just fun to talk about. And the other thing that's fun to talk about is the memorial to the men of the 2nd Maine Regiment in the Civil War.
Yes.
Not King related at all. But I can't drive past it without 17 people going, "What's that?"
Yeah.
So I can't not put it in. So unfortunately, there's so much King stuff in there that the next time something comes out, it's got to come out of the cemetery.
Yeah.
And I don't want it to, because I love being in that cemetery.
I do love that experience. And actually, my girlfriend, I made her take it last year. And at the time it was still in the winter, so we couldn't get out of the van. Most of the stuff was still closed off, and she actually brought up to me this time how much she liked that. Like, she liked getting out and walking through this beautiful garden cemetery, right, and seeing the gravestones. So yeah, I'm sure that's a tough decision. Which kind of brings me to another question I had written down. like something I love about the tour, and others who I've forced to go on the tour with me because they're not King nerds, something they all say they really love, and they've all loved the tour, which I think is a great testament to you guys, because they're some of them aren't even casual fans and they're still finding it very engaging. But something they've all loved about it is the history of Bangor that you keep in there, like the memorial and the crypt and things like that. And I just kind of want to know how you balance that, right? Because there is some things in there, that aren't King related, but there are a lot of historical instances that are, right? Is there anything that you want to include that you can't because of it's not King, or vice versa?
When I first started, I couldn't start just giving the full tour.
Sure.
I couldn't. I wasn't ready. I ended up first starting doing step-on tours for large visiting coach lines, and they're basically leaf peepers.
Sure.
They're coming up, they're looking at the leaves, they're going to Bar Harbor, they're having a lobster roll, they're driving home, and they'll stop by to see me, and I'm the only tour business in Bangor at all.
Right.
I'm not just the only Stephen King show, I'm the only tour business at all. So I started doing step-on tours for a bus full of people who aren't King fans.
Oh, wow.
Because when a coach line of leaf peepers showed up, that's not a Stephen King tour.
Right.
So I had to start with piles and piles of Bangor history and Stephen King's charitable works of the Stephen Tabitha King Foundation. And that's fun stuff. And Bangor has actually a surprising history associated with a guy named Harry Houdini.
Oh, I don't know this one.
No, because I don't have time or space, and that's not King related.
Yeah.
And in the Bangor Police Department, they have, the Bangor Police Department has a 300,000 person following on Facebook.
Wow.
There's only 35,000 people in Bangor. It is amazing, and they've got a little museum with the Duck of Justice.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and it's awesome, right?
Yeah.
And Bangor is, it's a very old city, and it's got a lot of stuff going on and a lot of great history. But I have to, if I can't tie something to Stephen King, I can't put it in.
Yeah.
And, so I like to fit some things in. Like in the tour, we drive past Freeze's. Freeze's was the largest department store north of Boston for a long time. And
featured in it.
Features in it.
Richie runs through it when he's getting chased by Henry Bowers and his gang.
Exactly. And we drive past on the tour the Bangor House.
Yeah.
Which was originally in the book, it would be the Dairy House.
Sure.
And that was the largest hotel north of Boston on the East Coast, and 6 presidents have stayed there.
Yeah.
But in my current version of the tour, I just can't get it all in at the turn. I can't get it all in.
Yeah.
So it really comes down to a balance of, how do you get some in, but also be able to get enough of it in so they hear a thing. So someone like you hear a thing, and then you get enough of the story to be satisfied.
Sure.
I can't just say, there's a thing there, there's a thing there, there's a thing there, there's a thing there. I'm turning right.
Yeah.
You have to get enough of it in to see there's a thing, and here's how it's important, and we should appreciate it.
Yeah.
And you don't get to do that as much as you'd like in only a 3-hour tour. I could do an 8-hour tour of Bangor. I'm
sure you could.
Most people aren't signing up for that one.
Yeah, right. I probably would. If that ever comes on the table, you please let me know. It's funny you say that, because the first time I ever took this tour, I took it with your dad. I think at that time you had not come back to Bangor. This was many years ago, and he actually did tell me the story of the Bangor House. And so even me, the casual, the casual goer, I should say, although it's becoming less casual the more I drive up there, I'm picking up these different things, and I think that's so fascinating. And I'll say, no offense to your dad, but I love your tour. I took your tour the last time I came as well, and I felt like you nailed it. Like you have such a good presence when you do it, and it's a perfect balance of mostly King, but you get that history aspect to it as well.
Well, you also get a lot of people on the tour who are not King fans.
Sure.
They're in Bangor. They're curious.
Yeah.
So they're not King fans. I mean, I did a tour today, did a private tour, 6 people, 1 fan.
Wow.
So I owe it to the other 5 people in the band for this to not suck.
Sure. And I think you're so successful in that because, like I said, I'm fresh off the tour with you. We just took a tour 2 days ago, and it was a nice private tour. And we brought my girlfriend's brother and his girlfriend, who are probably can't even be considered casual fans, but they really wanted the experience. And they had nothing but glowing things to say once it was over.
Nice.
So
you're very forgiving.
No, they had a great time.
So every tour is basically different based on the energy I'm getting from the group.
Yeah.
And it's, and when someone says they have a favorite book, I think in my head, can I fit that favorite book in here? Or can I fit a line? Can I fit a thing here or there? Which, makes every tour different and every tour exciting. I'm not just reading a script.
Yeah.
Because that's boring. I'm not going to do it backwards. That's crazy.
Yeah. Can you, could, off the top of your head, could you give me like if someone were to give you not an It or a Shining or something, like an obscure reference, like what do you, can you think of something off the top of your head where you're like, someone named this book, it's not your typical favorite King book, and you were able to give them something for it?
Not a typical King book that people like. The one everyone just treats poorly is Leesy's Story.
Yeah.
People just disrespect Leesy's Story.
I love Leesy's Story.
It's a great story. It's Steve's favorite book of his own that he's written.
His use of time in that book is so good. There's this one instance where there's 3 converging stories going on at once, and I remember reading that, just being floored by his use of time. But we'll nerd out a little bit later. Please go on.
But that's very rare for someone to say like they like that book, and it has nothing to do with Bangor.
Yeah.
But the correlation between Leezy and her late husband's life and Steve and Tabitha's life are eerily similar.
Right.
So even though they don't take place anywhere in Bangor, I can still talk about my favorite pizza place, Pat's Pizza, which was mentioned in Leezy's Story as the place I hung out. And you just have to find those connections. People come here to be connected, and that's what I try to do. So when I get those, rare, like bizarre, this was my favorite. A lot of people love Cujo.
Yeah.
Great book.
Yes.
Absolutely loved it. And I get a lot of The Stand. Now, The Stand has no connection to Bangor, Maine at all.
Right.
None. But I can fit in some of The Stand when I talked about when The Stand was published and the decision between 523 and 400,000 words.
Right.
I can find it. So I do the best I can. It's very rare that I can't, over 3 hours, find a thing.
Right, yeah.
But, I wish more people would read and understand Leesy's Story, and they're going to be able to watch it on Apple TV next month.
I can't wait.
So, and, Julianne Moore's in it. So, she's an amazing actress. And Steve wrote that entire screenplay himself.
Yes.
Yeah. So, he's got my attention.
Yeah, and it's actually the whole thing, I believe, is directed by Pablo Larraín, who is a really, really great filmmaker. He's not someone that comes to mind when you think King, and that's what makes me so excited to see it. Right? It's going to be great.
I'm very excited about it. I wish more people liked that book.
I love it. I actually, if people ask me if casual readers who aren't into horror want me to give them a Stephen King suggestion, I'll give them that one.
Really?
Because you know what? If you don't like it, you're not going to like King, and I it's one of my personal favorites. So that's
the things I can't connect are the Dark Tower series.
Yeah.
There were a pile of Dark Tower fans, and I'm one of them. I love the Dark Tower. I loved it from word 1, sentence 1. I was there. It didn't take me 3 books to get there, right? I was there.
Oh, you're talking to a Dark Tower nerd, my friend.
But I have no connection in the tour
for
the
Dark
Tower.
Yeah.
So that's the one spot. If you're going to say if there's a spot that I can't connect the dots, it's an 8-book spot.
Right, yeah. You know what? You say that now, and I'm literally going to, in my head, go through every piece of Dark Tower knowledge possible and throw you a line. Be like, this is the one.
The only one is when Steve wrote himself into the book.
Right, exactly.
That's the only spot.
Spoilers.
And, Whoops. Sorry, people. Spoiler alert. But I'm rereading every book in the order it's been published.
Yeah.
But I'm doing the Dark Tower separately later.
Yeah.
So I can't, like, I have to get back to that spot.
Yeah.
To see if I can fit it in the tour. And I'm not getting back there anytime soon.
Oh yeah. You got a long way to go, my friend.
I got a ways to go.
So this was something that my co-host, who has been in the background today, wanted me to ask you. Do you have off the top of your head the craziest fan experience that you've ever had? Aside from me, obviously, I can go a little crazy. But if there's anything else you know off the top of your head.
One Halloween, someone showed up in full new Pennywise costume.
That's awesome.
The whole thing.
Yeah. The
whole thing. The ruffles, the mask, the thing. And he took the entire tour dressed entirely as Pennywise.
Are we talking Skarsgård Pennywise or
Skarsgård
Pennywise? Okay.
Yeah. Whole thing. The entire tour, Skarsgård Pennywise. It wasn't a private tour. Everyone else on the bus was kind of losing it.
Oh, that's awesome.
And you know what? Good for him.
Yeah.
I had one person. They got off. There's a storm drain where Pennywise meets a little boy named Georgie.
Right.
And I had a customer get out once. She brought a yellow rain slicker with her.
Wow.
To put it on to be at that storm drain.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love the dedication. Love it. So yeah, my little ritual that I have, I showed you. I have this Cemetery Dance 25th anniversary edition. There's only 3,500 in existence, and when you saw it, you were like, that needs to be locked away in a safe.
Yeah, and I'm like, don't bring it with you to Bangor.
The only time it leaves the house is when I go to Bangor, because I'm like, it has to be with me. It's the only time it leaves the house. I take very good care of it, but that's my little crazy fan experience.
Yeah.
So
one time I had a young lady, when the tour was over, I brought her straight to a tattoo parlor.
Oh yeah.
Because she wanted a red balloon and paper boat, the SS Georgie, tattooed on her.
Yeah.
Now, I don't have tattoos. I love tattoos.
Yeah.
But man, that is a level of it's a level of fandom. And it's amazing how many people get to Steve's house.
Yeah.
And they break into tears.
Yeah. I can believe it.
It's for me, I mean, I walked past Steve's house every day to school.
Right.
And I get very few people from Maine on the tour, and I get very few people from Bangor on the tour, because he's not some big thing to us.
Yeah.
So when someone gets to the house and they've been waiting 10 years to get to the house, that's really powerful for me.
Yeah,
it's not something that I grew up with.
Yes.
He was normal. I went to middle school a year behind Joe. I mean, it's not unique to us to see Steve's house.
I think that kind of is a good transition into my next question is, what was it like growing up, quote unquote, in Bangor, and what was it like growing up, quote unquote, in Derry, right? Because that's kind of how we see it, people who aren't from there. So what was that like?
Everyone in Bangor, if you ever seen the movie 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, everyone in Hollywood is somehow connected to Kevin Bacon.
Right.
By 6 degrees. They knew a guy who knew a guy who did a thing. Everyone in Bangor is 2 degrees of Stephen King.
Sure.
The city of Bangor, everyone has met Steve, seen him, or spoken to him, or knows someone who did.
Yeah.
It's not 6 degrees, it's 2. It's almost 1.
Yeah.
And one time I was doing a tour, and a guy at the corner store that we would know as the Red Apple stopped the tour so he could tell us his Stephen King story.
Oh, wow.
One time at the gas station, someone stopped the tour to tell us their Stephen King story.
Yeah.
One time at RM Flags, someone got on the bus to tell us their Stephen King story. We all have that. So when it comes to growing up in Bangor, no one in Bangor, well, when I was a kid, you saw Steve every day because he could walk.
Yeah.
A lot. And everyone in Bangor saw Steve a lot. And if you were West Sider, you saw Steve every day. So Steve was a part of Bangor.
Sure.
And then he created this town called Derry in the book It. And then he showed me my town his way.
Yeah.
And he showed me kind of how terrifying the everyday walk could be.
Yes.
The standpipe, the bridge across the river, the Morlock, the barrens, the canals.
Yeah.
So when you talk about Bangor, you just grow up in Steve's in Bangor, and Bangor's in a couple books.
Right.
When you talk about Derry, it takes your town Bangor and just throws like a dark cloak over it, and it's just a dark place. And then after you've read the book and you walk those same streets, you're like, ooh, this was not a good choice.
Yeah. And it's funny you bring that up, because I've said this a few times that I love the first, I love the miniseries It. I saw it when I was very little. I love the first movie. The second movie has parts that are great, but of the new ones, of course. But I've kind of come to terms that I'm never going to get the It movie that I love, because visually when these filmmakers make it, they think clown, right? It's the scary clown. But to me, that's not the scary parts of the book. It's not the clowns. The real true horror of that book is the town, right? It's what, yeah. So
it's a dark place with a dark history.
Yeah,
absolutely. And but then we see Derry again in Insomnia.
Yeah,
and then we see it again in 11/22/63. But in the book, that was a very dark, very rough. I mean, the river where the runaway runs into the creature of the Black Lagoon.
Yeah.
Where it's just all there.
Yeah.
And the other books aren't as aggressively dark as it.
Yeah.
In Insomnia, it was a story that happened in Derry.
Right.
And things happened in Derry.
Sure.
But in it, Derry was a dark place. It's not the same story. It's not the same stuff.
Yep.
And Derry being a dark place, once you've read the book and you really start walking around, Steve shows you how his mind sees those things.
Yeah.
And where he sees terror in like the everyday.
Yeah.
And that's why that book absolutely blew my mind when I was a teenager.
Yeah. So I guess going along with this question, You might not have been there for a part of this, but what was it like living in Bangor or being in Bangor as the Stephen King legend grew, right? Like when he started with Carrie, we know the story. He couldn't sell out those first 13,000 pressings, to The Stand, to It, to the mega hits of the 80s that really changed the book game for everybody. What was it like in that town experiencing that?
It wasn't that different.
Really?
I mean, Steve always walked. People primarily left Steve alone. Steve was there.
Yeah.
Steve was on the radio on WZON. You could hear him on the radio one night a week. You'd see him walking regularly. But this didn't become a town of Stephen King. Steve was there.
Sure.
And you just saw him. You just saw him. Like, we had a guy once, he said, I used to be a waiter at a restaurant called the Ground Round. And Stephen King used to go there for dinner all the time. And he said, you'd always know which table was the King table, because when you look, every head was in a book. He goes, that's the one. Every head, every adult, every child is in a book waiting for food. Steve just unassumingly just lived his life. And this didn't become a town of Stephen King, which I think was the point, really. So all these successes happened. And remember also, no movies were made in Maine. The movies weren't primarily made in Maine. These movies were all made other places. Some snippets and some shots would happen in Maine. But it wasn't until Pet Sematary, the first one, that was made in Maine, where it became a thing. Every now and then, people would become extras in a Stephen King movie.
Sure.
And like a kid in my English class, my sophomore year, was an extra in Graveyard Shift. My English teacher was an extra in Pet Sematary. There were chances to be extras. Yeah. But those came and went kind of quietly, honestly. Sure. And I think it really hasn't changed in terms of people in Bangor.
Yeah. I mean,
something outside of Bangor that went nuts.
Yeah. Which is, it's funny too, because this is something I hear every tour I go on. You make sure to say it, but what's your one rule or you have two rules, right? What's your two rules?
Two rules. Leave Steve alone.
Right.
That's the first one. Leave him alone. Right. Second one. Never call Tabby Mrs. Stephen King.
Yep.
Those are it. Yeah. And if you do that, we're all going to get along just fine. If you break either of those, and I don't want to be the guy who bothers Stephen King.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had fans in the van, and I see Steve coming, and I lock the door.
Yeah.
So they can't get out of the van.
Yeah.
So Steve, because he's walking, he's got a pizza in his hand.
Sure.
Let him get into the house and have pizza.
Right.
He's just trying to walk into the house. He doesn't need 15 rabid fans.
Yeah.
I'm at his house. I try to, at best, give him a chance to get into it. One time last year, there was like a 5-year-old kid. I'm dealing with a 5-year-old kid at the front of Steve's house. Yeah. And everyone else is looking at the guest house. Mm-hmm. I said, hey, kid, come here. Let me look at your camera. The kid comes over, and what the kid didn't know is Stephen King walked right behind him, waved at me, kept walking, walked right behind all the people looking at Stephen King's guest house.
Wow.
And went into his walking gate.
Oh, my gosh.
And nobody saw him.
Wow.
And I didn't say, hi, Steve.
Right.
Because I'd be rude, right?
Yeah.
Let him go in. Let him get the pizza before it gets cold.
Right.
And so the world of Stephen King exploded everywhere but Bangor, Maine. Everywhere but Maine, honestly. Sure. But everywhere outside of Bangor, Maine, things went wild. Things in Bangor, other than his amazing contributions to the city,
sure,
we never became about Steve.
Yeah,
which is strange.
Yeah, but at the same time, like you said, you have all of these, charitable contributions that he's doing. I know he had a very large effect on the Betts bookstore, right? You had lots of signings there, and he was helping out, and. So I guess it's not surprising, you have this figure who's so good to the town. I guess the town wants to be good to him, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But there were people, when he put in a request to turn his house and his guest house into a retreat and a nonprofit.
Yeah.
There were people who said, well, what about the property tax?
Okay.
Well, which means they don't understand how taxes work.
Right, exactly.
They don't understand how that works. But Steve could have asked to turn his house into a Pennywise It-themed theme park.
Right.
It doesn't matter what he asked. We should have said yes.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But there were people who were like, well, what about all the property taxes? We need that money. It's like, well, you don't understand how taxes work.
Yeah.
And hasn't he given us enough?
Yeah. It's something you talk about on your tour a lot is the different charitable contributions that Steve has done, and he always said he never wanted anything put in writing anywhere on anything that he had donated or built. So I don't want to talk about it to an extent on a public forum like this, but it's really astounding what he's given to the community. So it to me as a fan, it warms my heart to see that one of my heroes really is a hero. And it.
You hear sometimes, like, don't meet your heroes. You'll always be disappointed.
Yeah.
They're drunks or they're womanizers or they won't sign autographs or blah, 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 blah. Anytime you can get in a room with any king, your time is not wasted. They are the absolute exception to that rule.
Yeah. And
there's charitable work, like I've heard of. I haven't been able to do the research to find it yet.
Yeah.
If I ever get into that red house, it's not going to be to get into the archives. It's going to be to talk to the King Foundation.
Yeah.
The Stephen Tabitha King Foundation has done more for this state than I even know.
Yeah.
I want to know all about it.
Yeah.
But that's not what they're about.
Right.
So I guess, I don't know, I'm going to have to read through the lines or try to figure it out.
Yeah.
But that's the thing I want to know. I want to share how much good they've done for us.
Yeah, it's.
I only know, I've only scratched the surface. I mean, there's other stuff at the hospital, Eastern Maine Medical Center, that I've heard of, but I can't verify.
You can't confirm.
If I can't verify it, I can't say it.
Sure.
and I don't have time to verify it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was going to ask you if you ever got into that archive, what you'd look at, and you just gave me an answer, and I think that's a really great thing to want to learn.
I would go for. I'd like to go to WKIT and the old WZON audio and listen to Stephen King be a DJ.
Yeah,
I'd like to do that. But I want to know everything.
Yeah,
because it's technically my job.
I know that feeling.
Yeah.
I don't get paid for it. I'm still like, I want to know.
Well, I don't get paid well for it, unfortunately. I run the business now, and I thought my father was stingy.
And you're learning a lot
compared to me.
Yeah.
Holy cow!
That's funny.
I'm basically an unpaid intern in my own business, but that's okay.
So were you said you were a grade removed from Joe. Were you friends with Joe, Naomi, or Owen growing up?
No. A couple of my friends were. Some of my friends were friends with Joe and would go to pool parties at the house and whatnot. But I was never in that group.
Sure.
Joe, at Fifth Street Middle School, Joe was a year ahead of me.
Okay.
And he was hard to miss because at Fifth Street, he was the tallest kid there.
Yeah.
Tall. But even at Fifth Street, it's not called Fifth Street anymore. But even then, in middle school, he was writing poetry for the class newsletter.
Yeah.
Dark stuff. He was writing dark stuff in middle school. So the fact that he's the king that is kind of following on does not surprise me at all.
Yeah. And if you ever read any of the stuff that's not surprising, I love Joe Hill. Just this year, I finally picked up Strange Weather, and those are four of the best stories I've ever read. He is his own voice too, which I think is great.
People try to compare him to his father, but you can't do it.
Yeah.
Right. You can't do it. I loved Heart-Shaped Box.
Yeah, I did too.
I absolutely loved that book. A great start. But I mean, Joe got his start in comics.
Yeah.
I mean, he did more in comics before anyone kind of knew who he was.
Right. And, eventually all that led to Lock and Key, obviously, which is critical acclaim. And now he owns his own horror comic subsidiary that's doing very well. I think it's called Dark House.
Killing it. Yeah. Yeah. I tried to get his attention once when I started. Actually, I've written a couple books myself, but when Steve says to be a writer, you've got to write a lot and read a lot.
Yeah.
I was in the military for so long, and you don't get to do either of those.
Yeah.
So I never got to develop the way I wanted to as a writer.
Sure.
You can't do that when you're out in the South China Sea.
Yeah.
But I'm doing pretty good. I'm having a great time.
Good.
And maybe I will write a book. It'll be the next SK Tour book.
Yeah.
I am working on rewriting that next February. I want to change that book. I want to rewrite that book.
Yeah.
Because my father, when he wrote that book with a guy named George Beam, who's a Stephen King biographer.
Okay.
He focused on Steve.
Yeah.
Not on Stu Tinker. But Stu Tinker, my father, did something amazing.
Yeah.
With Bet's Bookstore, with SK Tours, with and I want to do something about that. I want to talk about my father.
Yeah.
And like how all this started and the schemers and some of the people in the schemers. And, I there's so much more that I want to do that my father won't talk about because he won't talk about himself.
Sure.
Like stealing my college fund. So like that's not nice. But that's the stuff I want to talk about.
Yeah. And your father's great. He was the first experience that I had on the Stephen King tour, right? He was the very first one I took was with him. He was so nice and so knowledgeable, and obviously built this foundation that you want to push to the next level, right? And it's funny because he became an authority on Stephen King, right? He was in a bunch of documentaries and things like that. Could you touch more on that?
If you go to Castle Rock season 1 on Hulu, there's a documentary like The Search for Castle Rock or Finding Castle Rock. I don't know what it's called.
Yeah.
My father's half of that. And remember on the tour, the Low House on the top of Thomas Hill behind the Standpipe? Yes. He did the entire interview in their barn.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Oh, very cool.
A lot of old stuff in there.
Yeah.
The documentary for the making of the first Pet Cemetery.
Yeah.
Is half Stu Tinker.
Yeah. I've seen that one actually, and I've seen him in it.
That's a great one. I love that one.
Yeah.
And He's been on A&E. He's been on Biography.
Yeah.
We did 5 documentaries in 2019 in 4 different languages.
Yeah, you were saying that. That's crazy.
We are every time it's not so much when books come out. When a movie comes out, though, people lose their minds and everyone wants to make a documentary.
Yeah.
An issue with that, though, is the content doesn't change.
Yeah.
We're just saying the same things different way, but it's that's what we do.
Yeah.
He's created this amazing thing, and he's done all these documentaries. And personally, I'm on the hook to do all these documentaries because I'm already in talks with one for later this year. But he was the authority.
Yeah.
He's the guy that built all this.
Sure.
And, I'm reading as fast as I can. And I'm trying to ask my dad as many questions before he loses, his faculties, right? As he gets older, he loses his memory.
Yep.
One time at the Queen City Cinema Club, it's a place in Bangor where you can rent a little movie theater all by yourself.
Oh, very
you can
cool.
watch a movie on a big screen in a little theater, just you and your friends. And they have an arcade. They have they have lots of games and great food.
Yeah.
And one day they had a Stephen King trivia night.
Ooh.
So I brought myself, my father, and Gerald Winters.
Oh my!
Gerald Winters and Son. And we walked in, and everyone was like, "Oh, there we go.
Might as well leave."
We were at the
that's a super team,
but not by much. But to get my dad and Gerald Winters together, the 2 top authorities on Stephen King, other than Stephen King and Tabitha King,
sure,
right? To get the 2 top authorities on Stephen King in the city, at a table, at trivia night.
For trivia night of all things, which
my
is cool.
hand cramped. I couldn't write fast enough because I was gone for all this time.
Right.
So unfortunately, as much as I like doing all these things and I want to do these documentaries, there's always going to be a time when I feel like I don't have it.
Sure.
Because my dad built it.
Yeah.
And I'm working as fast as I can. Hopefully I can get him to do some documentaries to make me save the world from seeing my poor mug.
Yeah. Well, coming from another super fan, again, I know your dad's big shoes to fill, but I think you're doing great, and I think what you're doing for the business is great. And every time I take your tour, it is an absolute pleasure. So, from one super fan to another. So I was wondering if you could tell me, your family has been friends with the King's family for a long time. Do you have a best or a favorite personal Stephen King story that you'd be willing to share?
I don't really have one.
Oh, really?
Unfortunately. I remember, here's my first experience with Stephen King.
Yeah.
I was at the Bangor Mall.
Okay.
And I had the brand new copy of The Eyes of the Dragon in my hand.
Nice.
And Stephen King was at a book signing at the Bangor Mall.
Oh, wow.
Of The Eyes of the Dragon. And I stood in line. And I got to Stephen King, and he chats with me. No idea what he said.
Yeah.
And while he's talking to me, he's popping aspirin because his hands are so cramped. This is what they did at the Bangor Mall. They put him at a table in the Bangor Mall and walked away.
I'm sure that ended well.
An army of people with a book in their hands. There was no, like, hey, stop here. No, we only have 500. Nothing.
Yeah.
It was just a wave of people. And he literally, he was popping aspirin between signatures because his hands were cramping so bad.
Yeah.
And right after that, he quit signings.
Yeah.
And I was there at that.
Yeah.
And then my father did some signings with Steve, and he made sure every person got to be in a room alone with Stephen King.
Sure.
And some security guards.
Right.
And Steve could relax and enjoy it. It was limited, a certain number of people, a certain amount of time, and it was controlled. So Steve could actually relax. But my first experience with Stephen King was being part of that tidal wave that wrecked signings for it.
Yeah.
Which is bizarre.
Yeah.
It's a bizarre to say.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I was in line in the event.
Yeah.
That said him say, I'm out. I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. And I'm like, here, sign my book.
Yeah.
But I remember seeing him literally popping aspirin between the signatures. And there must have been hundreds of people still behind me.
Yeah.
And I'm a teenager. I didn't know any better. But now as an adult, I'm like, man, poor Steve.
Yeah, and I can verify that to this day he does not do signings like that. I've seen Steve 3 times. I've seen him once on a book tour with Owen for Dr. Sleep, and Owen was releasing double feature. Saw them both again for their book tour for Sleeping Beauties, and saw them again. I saw him and Joe a few years ago when the Institute came out and Full Throttle. And what he does now, what he does now is he signs a set amount of copies beforehand. You're guaranteed a book when you leave, and they're randomly distributed signed copies. And I will have you know, you can ask Josh if you ever want to talk to him. I have the worst, like, borderline luck in the world. Like, things always just like go that way. I've gotten 3 signed copies from 3 events. I pool all of my luck for signed Stephen King.
That one moment.
Yeah, for signed Stephen King editions.
Yeah, I remember being there. I remember being just a guy in a line.
Yeah.
And not realizing that the guy was just getting beat down.
Yeah.
Literally, there was no one around. Like, he was alone in the Bangor Mall.
It's astounding to even think of that scenario. It's
bizarre. And we're talking about the Eyes of the Dragon.
Yeah.
He wasn't new.
Yeah.
Right? He wasn't, but we're not talking Carrie here.
Yeah, Eyes of the Dragon came out in the mid-'80s, right?
Well, the trade book was 1987.
Yeah.
So he was well into killing it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember there was no stopgap between a line and him.
Yeah.
And that is bizarre.
Yeah.
And it was obvious he wasn't having a good time.
Yeah.
Obvious.
Yeah.
Now, I remember when Steve did the thing with Joe down in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
They did that thing together, the two of them. And I was giving tours for people, and I dropped them off at the bus station so they could go down to that event, and I couldn't because I had tours to give.
Yeah, you're talking about this was for Full Throttle, and I was there. I took a Greyhound up to Boston. I was giving tours for people who were then going down to it. Yeah.
Well, I was giving tours.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Feel my pain. Feel my pain.
I know. Yeah, I feel your pain up there, just giving Stephen King tours all day, every day.
I have the best job in the whole world.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. So this has been awesome. Again, guys, Stephen King Tours of Maine up in Bangor. If you're ever there, or even if you're a huge King nerd, please go up, check him out, give him all your money. I've taken the tour 4 times, gets better every time. Before we say goodbye, though, I was wondering if you'd indulge me a little bit, and let's nerd out for a few minutes before we go. All right. Off the top of your head, not thinking about it, Dark Tower novels excluded, give me a top 5.
It.
Okay,
Thinner.
Oh, okay.
Insomnia.
All right.
On Writing.
Interesting.
Skeleton Crew.
Wow, that's
You've got to get a collection in there.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Skeleton Crew is a great collection.
It is a very good collection.
Night Shift is a good collection, but it's a very young Steve.
Sure.
Skeleton Crew is a little mature.
Yeah.
But there's still a lot of stories.
Yeah.
You know, I think you get the most bang for your buck in good, mature stories in Skeleton Crew.
Yeah, I agree. I would agree with that. All right, I'm going to give you my top 5. You can give me feedback, okay?
Bring it.
Number 1, It. It's the first novel I ever read of his. It's always going to have that place in my heart, so we have that in common. 2, Desperation.
Really?
Yeah. 3, The Shining. I have there's a bit of a history of alcoholism in my family, so that book always hits home. 4 would probably be, it's a tough one. I'm probably going to have to go The Stand. And then 5's a dark horse, Revival.
Really?
Here's why I love Revival, because Revival came out at a point where Steve started to like the happy ending a lot. And a lot of his novels were wrapped up very, very nicely. And long ago was the day of Pet Sematary, right, where we have these dark endings. And I remember reading Revival and loving this story and getting to the end. And the end of that book is beyond brutal. And it's so dark that...
And you can't share it.
You
don't want to spoil it.
I can't spoil it, but it rejuvenated me. Like, it was just like this... I love... You know, he knows his characters. He can tell his story. But when his endings hit like that, and there's very few that hit like the ending of Revival, it just... it gets me real good.
And I was so upset when the movie revival stopped.
Bummed.
When Flanagan said, we're out of revival business, I was sad.
Yeah.
Like, I thought that was going to be...
Because he's doing it right, you know? Like, he's killing it right now.
Nailed Dr. Sleep.
The end scene in Dr. Sleep where he meets quote unquote Lloyd at the bar. The first time I saw that, I cried in theaters. It just hit me on so many different levels.
That is such a good story. And I read The Shining recently as an adult. The first time I read Shining, I was like 17.
Yeah.
Right, but reading Shining at 17 is a ghost story. Reading Shining, I'm 48 now. Reading Shining at 48 is an adult story.
Yes. And
not the same at all.
Yeah, it's truly a different experience. So let's jump into my next question, which is the Shining question, right? How do you feel about Kubrick? How do you feel about Mick Garris? How do you feel about the whole shebang?
All right. Well, kind of, you want to piss off some people, do you? I remember when I was young.
Yeah.
I couldn't finish Kubrick's The Shining.
Wow.
I could not finish it.
Yeah.
I got to that lady in the tub, and the movie ended.
Yeah.
That was it. And I'd try again. I'd get another 5 seconds into that lady in the tub, and the movie ended.
Yep.
I never got beyond the lady in the tub. And if you haven't read the book, it's a great movie and it's fun.
Yeah.
But if you've read the book, you get it.
Yeah.
And that's... people who love The Shining, and The Shining is a great piece of work.
Yeah.
I just was reading an article the other day. That's considered Kubrick's top 3.
Right.
Yeah.
In
terms of creating a story that did what it was supposed to do, he created what he wanted to create, and he did a great job.
Yeah.
But then if you watch The Shining and then read the book, then you go, oh,
yeah.
Man, what about all this other stuff, right?
Sure.
What about all this other stuff? And I get the concern. One, The Shining, the book, is a man's struggle as he spirals.
Right. Yeah.
And Kubrick's The Shining, it's spiral with no struggle, and it's not that much spiral.
Yeah.
It's just insanity.
Yeah,
whereas the original Shining, Steve's book, The Shining, is a struggle with alcoholism, with family problems, with money, with all the things we all worry about.
Yeah.
As a man, just spirals down into this loss of control. So I see both arguments.
Yeah.
I prefer the long miniseries.
Yeah.
I do. I think Steven Weber's amazing.
Yeah, he very underrated job in that.
I think he did a great job.
Yeah.
I liked the casting.
Yep.
And I don't think you're ever going to find a Stephen King story that I don't like made longer.
Yeah, film. That's a good point.
2 hours and 8 hours.
Yeah.
Not the same.
Yes. Yeah.
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 And you get to have a lot more fun.
Yeah.
It's like Mick Garris did The Stand, 8 hours.
Yeah.
Nailed it. Amazing.
Yep.
But then you got 10 hours.
Yeah.
Of The Stand in the new miniseries. An hour of that being brand new content that we'd never seen before. Steve wrote the last episode.
Yeah, from Steve himself.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
I'll see it 15 hours next time, and I'll still be lined up.
Yeah.
The more hours you can get, an hour of a minute of screenplay is a page.
Yes.
Right? A page of screenplay means a minute of film time. How can you get it all into 2 hours?
Right.
How can you get it all into a feature-length film? I mean, even It's Chapter 1 and 2, which was amazing.
Yeah.
They didn't get it all.
Right.
You have to distill it to, how do I get as close as I can to the feelings?
Yes.
I think we should see more It. I think there should be more of it. I don't need an It Chapter 3. I don't need that, right?
I think we'd all love that, like a 10-part miniseries, right?
I would love a 10-part miniseries. When someone tried to pitch that, it didn't work out.
Yeah.
I don't need anything after It. I wouldn't mind seeing the backstory before.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind seeing
they have discussed
1911.
Yeah.
Right. I wouldn't mind seeing that.
Yeah.
Right. But it really comes down to the things you see in the book that happen in your head will never happen on screen.
Yeah.
Because it's in someone else's head, and
Sure.
they're putting on screen their way, and they see the world different. They have a different worldview. They have different experiences, and that's why Stephen King is different to all of us.
Yeah. It's funny. Me and Josh have a saying we made during one of our old podcasts that we're going to put on a T-shirt. I said I was sad because I know I'm never going to see a metaphysical battle with a cosmic spider, and so we're going to put that on T-shirts. So because It Chapter 2, I love it and I love it and I hate it at the same time. Like I love the fact that I'm seeing this, that I'm getting a 3-hour epic of it, and I'm hating that I'm never going to get a true metaphysical battle with a cosmic spider. So we give and we take. Yeah, so I'd hate to take any more of your time. I do want to wrap it up here, and there's 2 more questions I want to ask you. One being, what are some more projects coming out that you're excited for Steve? It's a golden age of adaptations right now, and I want to wrap it up with what's next for SK Tours of Maine.
So Steve is in talks with a guy named J.J. Abrams.
One of those guys.
To do a new horror anthology.
Yeah.
I heard it. I know nothing else about it. Right?
Yeah.
We're not talking. I don't know if they were talking about The Overlook, the series coming,
Sure,
or what. But if they're doing a new anthology that I don't know about, I'm excited. The other thing I'm excited about is Shudder's Creepshow.
Yeah.
Greg Nicotero is killing it.
He really is.
And that is fantastic. And the more of that we can see, the better. I also love the Stephen King Dollar Baby.
Yeah.
Every time I interact with someone with a Dollar Baby program, I'm impressed. They're all love letters to Stephen King.
Yeah.
And they're loaded with Stephen King Easter eggs. Now, for SK Tours, I'm just going to keep trying to build the best tour I can.
Yeah.
The more I read, the more I do. I want to create a tour that you can come back to and see again and it be different than it was this time. I can only probably change a tour every couple years. But my next step is to put a 24-inch television in the van.
Yeah.
So I can show you a slideshow while I'm driving.
Yeah.
So I say, look at this, and you can see the TV, and hopefully within 5 or 10 seconds, you can see the same thing.
Right.
That is really big on my list, but that's going to take, it's going to take weeks to figure out.
Yeah. No pain, no gain, right?
Yeah.
This is the dream, but build up this Stephen King empire as high as you can.
And I'll just keep working on it.
That sounds great. Well, Jamie, thank you so much for being on our podcast. Everybody out there, please go check out Stephen King Tours of Maine. You can find that at sk-tours.com. It has been an absolute pleasure, my friend. I look forward to talking to you in the future and to getting up there and smashing these records.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Have a great night.
All right, have a good one. Thanks for listening to the Nightmare Network podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and don't be afraid to give us suggestions on movies that spooked you out for our next episode. You can visit nightmarenetworkofficial.com to submit your own nightmare to be adapted into a short film on our YouTube channel. As always, at Nightmare Network, you share your scares.